an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows, Season 2 finale, Episode 10, Nouveau Théâtre de Vampire. I am not saying that right, but I just wanted to really get into it incorrectly. In this episode, the gang has been invited to a very exclusive event, not questioning why this year they suddenly made the cut. Guillermo, meanwhile, has bailed. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. I'm really excited because Max commissioned the remainder of Season 2, and I hadn't checked ahead, but it looks like we've got 5 or 6 episodes, 7, of Season 3 booked already. So I am going to be continuing right along. I was sort of worried that there might be a big break there, but it doesn't look like there's that much of a break at all. So I'm really excited, guys. Everything that I had questions about last episode in terms of what might happen with Guillermo, I won't say it's answered because things are still sort of weirdly up in the air by the end of this episode due to the fact that he decides that he's going to go and save them. But I have to assume that there's more potential here than I was expecting, because I was sort of asking, well, what would it even look like for the show if Guillermo did leave? And now I'm starting to wonder, based on what he does here, is there going to be a huge backlash that results in him having to guard them in a way that's a lot more aggressive and visible than previously? Because we know he's guarded them already. That's what half this episode is about, is the Staten Island vampires being blamed for the murder of vampires that in fact Guillermo actually committed. So let's start this episode off. We've got Nandor struggling to get out of his coffin, and he's yelling for Guillermo, saying, "Are you sitting on the lid? I can't get it open." And as he's saying this, we're getting the voiceover of an interview with Nandor talking about how Guillermo can be inconsistent. He's a human, so there's only so much that you can expect. And there's a lot here of him just assuming that Guillermo is around and shirking his duties, which is kind of funny considering that we have never really seen Guillermo shirk any duty at all. Not until recently, when he has demanded days off and breaks and stuff like that. And even that isn't shirking. It's just fucking reasonable. So him not turning up to open Nandor's coffin, Nandor's sort of treating it like, well, he can be this way. And I'm like, can he? And I think Guillermo just doesn't really want to acknowledge yet the potential problem, because it never enters his mind that Guillermo would have just disappeared. So he finally opens the coffin, stands there waiting for Guillermo to show up and hold his hand so that he can get down out of the coffin. And what I really like about this sequence is that it emphasizes how every single part of how the Staten Island vampires live is dependent on somebody else handling basic shit for them. He can't even get his coffin open without kind of a struggle, and getting down out of it, it's awkward and just annoying. And could he have built things up in such a way that he doesn't have to wake up like this? Absolutely. We have Laszlo and Nadja, they sleep upright in coffins. They are able to get out, I would imagine, no problem at all. But this is the choice Nandor has made, that he didn't have to. And now he's put himself into a position where he can't, do for himself without trouble if his familiar isn't there. So he finally gets out of the coffin and is wondering whether Guillermo just took another day off, coming towards his room with a whole attitude of like, I'm going to sneak up on him. And then when he opens the curtain, Guillermo is gone. There is no remaining, like, I was a little bit shocked. I kind of wondered if Guillermo was going to be dicking around and like, oh, I just didn't think you were going to need me to get out of your coffin. I thought you could do that yourself. And like kind of giving attitude, you know? But the fact that he pulls the curtain back and there's like no bedding left, there's no possessions of any kind. I was like, oh, damn, he's really gone. And all there is a folded note that says sorry. And I don't know how many of y'all have watched Sex and the City, but this was just giving strong Burger vibes. There's a character in that show. His last name was Burger, which is what she usually called him. Can't remember his first name. And they have a sort of spat. And I say spat, but really what it comes down to is he isn't as successful as Carrie is, and he's very insecure about it, and it like kind of overcomes him at a point. They split, and then they make up, and it seems like things are great. They have fantastic sex. She wakes up in the morning, he is gone, and all there is left is a Post-it note that says, I can't, I'm sorry, don't hate me. And this leads to a bit of a meltdown on Carrie's end because she does not want to pursue contact with him, as he seems to have made it clear he doesn't want that. And also she doesn't feel like this pathetic excuse for a note is really worth pursuing. But also this sense of just, I can't believe that you would duck out without even a conversation in the middle of the night. And in this scenario, it makes a lot of sense to me that Guillermo would choose to do it like this. I mean, what are they going to do? The whole thing is sort of a game of chicken where each of them like wants to be part of one another's lives, but doesn't feel like they're getting treated the way they should. And they're getting wrapped up in it's just, I don't blame him for deciding what's the point in a conversation. We've kind of tried. I made some demands. He granted them. And I was still not happy and feeling like maybe this isn't what I should be doing with my life. Maybe this is pathetic. And I don't want to engage in another conversation where he's going to try and convince me I should hang around. I really do understand that. And especially considering the service that he was rendering that just never got acknowledged. And in the last episode, again, saving their lives and nobody ever acknowledging that at all. You know, I'm not really mad at him for finally being like, I can't do this anymore. What I find fascinating is the way I had wondered, you know, what is it going to look like if Guillermo isn't there and they start to see everything that he used to take care of and what work it's going to be to do anything without him. I think it's interesting that getting another familiar never gets brought up this episode. Because like I've said, they've had others and they haven't worked out super well. Guillermo's the longest term one. And I'm kind of wondering if the fact that they don't mention getting another one is sort of them acknowledging the fact that the others have never been very good, and that Guillermo, having survived, frankly, as long as he has, is kind of unusual, and the competence that he has exhibited is unusual, that maybe they are tacitly admitting his shoes are not going to be easy to fill. And I don't know if that's me reading into it too much, or if that's supposed to be something that gets acknowledged a little bit later on. The end of this episode, it's unclear to me what Guillermo is going to do, if he's going to continue to work with them And I'm saying with instead of for now because obviously the power dynamic is going to have changed. So I'm really curious about where he goes from here. So, all right. We start off after the credits with Nadja, who is leading the camera down the hall, insisting that it's so nice for them to have the house to themselves. They don't miss having Guillermo around at all. Everything is totally fine and under control. And she's passing this, like, sort of bureau that has candles on it that are just completely out of control. And she is yelling to Nandor, did you blow out these candles and before you went to bed? And he says, they're not in my room, so no, I did not blow them out. And this just gave me a bit of a flashback. I don't know how many of you listening are aware, but I think it was last year, a candle in my office, it was next to a lamp that had like a scarf draped over the lamp. And it was quite far enough away, I thought. It was a good, 8 inches from the lamp, the edge of it. But I didn't realize that when I open and close my office door, that scarf flutters quite a bit because it was this very light, it was an antique, frankly, it was tragic. A very light lace. So I opened the door to pee. The thing fluttered up, landed on the candle, went up, took my whole lamp, took a bunch of my wall, the whole, the light switch, everything melted. It was really something. And it was I was peeing after finishing my recording for the day, planning to go get in the car and leave to go run some errands. And I'm so glad that I had to go to the bathroom and stayed long enough to come out of the bathroom and sniff and be like, what is that? And open the door and find the fire. Because if I had just left, can you imagine? I don't know what we would have. Owen wasn't even home. He was on a camping trip with friends. So it was just me. And I think about that all the time. So I have a little bit of a complex now about lighting candles and never leaving them by themselves, which I know is supposed to be the policy we all uphold, but most of us don't. Let's be perfectly honest. You don't usually feel like just leaving the room to pee and come back is going to be a problem. So anyway, this moment of seeing the whole wall behind these candles is really scorched. There's a painting that has been half destroyed, and one of them is missing a big chunk out of the canvas. And she just picks up a random bucket. I don't know what it is supposed to be that's in the bucket, but it's sitting there, and she tosses it over the candles. And he yells about how now the wall is all wet. I'd like to think that bucket is there catching a drip. That there's just a leak and they just have a bucket there. And yeah, she's just saying oh, and as I was saying, it's so nice to have the house all to ourselves. We can't rely on a human familiar. And as she's doing this, she's backing into the sort of anteroom where a bunch of bodies are just dropped on the floor. And I really do enjoy that as she's talking, she's sort of reminding us how far she's come in terms of moving away from her humanity, because she genuinely doesn't seem to remember what a human lifespan is supposed to be. So she's thinking oh, what's a familiar going to be? How long could they possibly be around? 200 or 300 years? And she asks the camera guy, what are you in your 90s? And I just found it really fun, the concept of her genuinely having lost track of how long human beings live. Why would you pay attention to that? I'm not mad at her. So she opens the door into their sort of living room, and he's in the middle of drinking from some guy. It's kind of a funny scene because there's no blood of any kind. So I wasn't sure if I was supposed to believe that he was just drinking from him. But this dude seems a little bit disappointed almost that Laszlo isn't going to kill him. he tells him, just be gone. You're not going to drink all of my blood until I die? Not tonight, Josephine. It's too messy. Easier if you just walk out. And he leaves looking genuinely disappointed. Like, I guess he was either suicidal or maybe like low-key hoping he would be turned. I don't know. But this is when Nadja begins to crack a little bit and show things aren't what she's trying to say they are. She's getting mad about the fact that they are leaving bodies everywhere. She's asking like where one of them came from. And Laszlo is saying, you did that. And I don't know whether to believe him or not, but I do like the concept of Nadja, like dropping these people and then trying to be like, well, who did this? I would believe that. And as she's looking around, she had just started to like trip over a body herself. The camera turns just in time to catch Colin Robinson, who is walking down the hallway, apparently about to head for work. And he is wearing his all beige outfit as usual and just slips in a blood puddle and goes flying. There are a lot of pratfalls and almost pratfalls this episode. And I have to say, all of them are pulled off really, really well. Physical comedy is not always easy to pull off. I won't say like it's specifically hard to pull off exactly, but it can feel a little cheap if you don't do it right. And the way that Colin goes down, he lands so hard. And when he gets up, the stain all the way down his side is just priceless. I love this so much. And I love when he decides that he's not even going to change to go to work. He says, whatever, I'm just going to say I got in a bus accident or something. And he walks toward the door, and as he does, fucking trips on yet another body and is obviously getting quite irritable about it. So then we have Nandor flying in as a bat, asking if anyone else is a little chilly. To which Laszlo says, I'm cold as a witch's tit. And that is a saying my mother used to use all the time when I was a kid. It's cold as a witch's tit outside. Not appropriate for children, but nevertheless, she did it. So it was kind of adorable to hear that again. I haven't heard that in a really long time. And Laszlo accuses Nandor of having let the fire burn down and then just pulls the top off of part of their piano and chucks it into the flames. Both of them, by the way, are wearing, like, Nandor's got his usual flowy pirate-like shirt on, but he's got a, like, basketball jersey pulled over it. And Laszlo is wearing, like, sweatpants, but they're, like, bright green. I don't even know. And they're talking about how Guillermo used to take their clothes to get cleaned, and they never checked in about where he went, how he did it. Nadja is talking about how they should contact the like village washerwoman. And then we get Colin, and I love this so much. What he decides to do is pretend that it's a really intimidating, quasi-dangerous job to take the clothing to be cleaned. Now, I don't know if Guillermo's going to come back to work for Nandor again. I say for when I was just establishing that I'm going to say with, but I broke it. My bad. I would love it if Guillermo does return, if they kept this going, that him getting their clothes cleaned was some sort of feat of valor on his part. I think that would be pretty funny. But anyway, Colin just wants them to agree to let him move into the other room in the basement. And I am not sure if this is like anything. There's a part of me that was sort of wondering, like, is that really all he wanted? Is he taking both rooms? Like, why did he even think that they were going to care? And I think that's part of the joke, of course. It's just like him asking for something they literally could not give two shits about and probably wouldn't even notice if he just decided to do it because he felt like it. But yeah, this little bit where he's like, I don't want to tell you how I know, and I may not come back from it. That's a good bit. I also love Nandor sort of thinking about whether or not he should have been more aloof with Guillermo. And Laszlo saying he's just a familiar. And Nandor reacting with, you're right, he is just a familiar. Fuck that guy for making me wonder if I should have been more aloof. It's just a beautiful little, like, it's like a bad breakup, you know, and your friend being like, maybe if I had done such and such, you wouldn't have left. And the friend just being like, whatever, you don't need that guy anyway. Yeah, you're right. I don't need that guy. Except in this case, Guillermo really was necessary to their lives, evidently. So anyway, Colin agrees to take their laundry, and he does this in response to the arrival of this invitation that comes in. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit because the invitation thing happens after the establishment of how little they all even know about Guillermo. Nandor asks Colin, take this picture of me having fun and text it to him so that he knows how much I don't miss him. Again, lovely little like moments of them being in a romantic relationship and having had a breakup. So he poses with this, you know, grizzly to act like he's being eaten. And Colin says, well, I don't have his phone number. And he says, look it up. And Colin says, okay, what's his last name? And nobody knows. And when they further ask, what is something they know about him besides his name that they could potentially use to, you know, thin down the results in Colin's searches? They don't know anything about him, which feels pretty standard. You know, I mean, it's not that I am not judging them for it, but it seems like generally in the vampire world, I would assume most vampires don't know anything about their familiars. I don't feel like there's a need. I don't think they would see that there's a need, you know? So this is unsurprising to me. It seems a little bit surprising to them that they like are realizing they don't know anything, but there doesn't seem to be any revelation in response to them realizing that they don't know anything. There's no moment of like, wow, we really didn't give him the respect he deserved. There's nothing like that. They're all just sort of like sitting there trying to come up with anything. And this is when they get interrupted by the person who is delivering the invitation. And I do really enjoy when Colin Robinson tries to get Laszlo to answer the door, and Laszlo starts imitating Colin Robinson back at him. It's a pretty good imitation. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, not just not great, but Laszlo's is pretty damn good. And eventually Nandor gets up to do it, to which Colin says, well, I wanted to do it. And that response, I don't know why that got me, but that was really funny to me. The whole, like, I'm going to argue and argue and argue, but then be fucking salty that you won't let me do it. So even opening the front door, we find out they don't know what to do. Nadja thinks there's a hex on it. Then Laszlo says that probably Gizmo cursed it. And Colin has to be like, pull. And I, like, the fact that Colin knows this stuff and they don't, again, is he going to make himself more valuable? Is it going to be the sort of thing where he's like, oh, now that they need me, I'm more involved and maybe I don't want Guillermo to come back? I don't know, just a thought. But yeah, this dude delivers this invite. Laszlo does a completely unnecessary memory removal to the poor delivery guy. And then they open this invitation, and it is a big deal when he says that it's the invitation to the Nouveau Théâtre des Vampires, everybody knows exactly what this is immediately. And they start talking about how they travel from Europe. It's a really big deal because they only come once every 5 years. And only the like creme de la creme de la creme of vampire society is ever invited. And this is the first year they have made the cut. Everyone who sees it says that it's magnificent, and all vampire cast, the most beautiful, eerie, poignant, important work. And then Laszlo has to cut in, and I hear there's a lot of nudity. And when I say a lot, I don't mean a whiff of tit. I mean the full rack, full boobies, full boners, the full display. And I love as he's saying that, Nadja just grins at the camera in this sort of like inside jokes, like, kind of way. She's into this as well. And I really do appreciate every time the show makes an effort to remind us that, first of all, the two male vampires are bisexual or pansexual, I guess, because I guess they've fucked people who aren't even like other vampires or humans. And that Nadja is like very into sex and really not jealous of Laszlo, although she was last episode, I suppose, but that was like a friend, that's probably a different scenario. But just all of this reaction that they're having to this is just really fun. And Nandor, of course, we are going to have so much fun. Even Colin Robinson is really excited, which is not something I am used to seeing at all. And then all of a sudden, Nadja says, we don't have any clothes to wear. How are we going to show up dressed like this? We're going to be a laughingstock. We can't do this. This is when Colin offers to go and take care of the laundry, and they begin cheering. And Colin shares with the camera, basically, I just needed to go to the dry cleaners anyway, and I didn't want them to know how easy it was, because then all of a sudden you're the go-to dry cleaning fetcher. And he is dead correct, as far as I am concerned. This is the way to deal with anything that you are asked to do that's beyond your normal job description in a regular workplace as well. Over the years, I have learned that being competent at your job does not mean that you get treated better. It does not mean that you get paid more. It doesn't mean anything to anyone except you and the mental health of your immediate supervisor, who knows that they can rely on you. But anything beyond that, nothing. I am a huge proponent of the idea, every time they ask you to do something that is beyond what your normal job description includes, make it clear this was arduous, that you don't think you could handle doing it again, or if you do, that it would require additional compensation, that it took a lot of time for you to track down the information about how to do it. It doesn't matter if it was super easy. That isn't the thing. You only invite them if you make it sound like it was so easy that it was nothing. You only invite them to then request this of you on the regular. And that, my friends, is how you start to get an ever-growing list of responsibilities for the same job, for the same pay, which is not what we want. So, all that to say, act like shit is harder than it is. I know it's tempting to try and, show off because I am this way. My ego is very much tied into my productivity and my performance, and so I have a hard time, holding back. But, again, there is nothing to be gained except for them knowing they can give you extra stuff to do and it'll get done. That's all you're gaining. Not more money, not more respect, not a promotion, not anything like that. And there are maybe going to be some jobs where that's the exception. They are the exception. They are by far the exception. So anyway, I fully sympathize with Colin Robinson. And since he works in like, offices, I feel like it makes a lot of sense that he would be the guy to know to handle it this way. So this is when we go to Guillermo. And he is moved back in with his mom. And I really did enjoy the way that they handle this. So him and his mom are speaking Spanish. And they don't offer any subtitles for anything that they're saying. Which I can understand being like a little bit frustrating if you don't speak Spanish. I speak only a very little. I could understand what they were saying. But it was not like immediate. It's not, I'm not a native speaker. It was me going like, your película, oh, your movie. Like, it's not necessary to know what she's saying really for the scene, but there is just something about not offering the translation that makes me feel like we're just going to treat this like it's something that you can't be a part of necessarily. It doesn't have anything to do with you. You don't need to be included, And I don't know why, but I sort of liked it. So he's saying that he moved back in with his mom. She apologizes because she's making a ton of noise in the back trying to get their refrigerator to work again. And Guillermo says, I had to get out of there. Never mind that I'm prone to being a vampire slayer. But also wanting to be a vampire, I just had to think about that and also manage my everyday duties, which were falling at the wayside because I wasn't focused. And then we see him, and there's a mention here. Martin had been in the chat and he had to leave, but he left a comment. I have to leave, so just before I go, I want you to know that I find it hilarious that both Nandor is the, quote, only sane man, unquote, during the actual theater part when Laszlo and Nadja are complaining about the choreography, and Guillermo ominously polishing the sword behind Nadja's head. And yeah, he's standing behind both Laszlo and Nadja and staring at Laszlo specifically, polishing this sword really slowly with a focused gaze like he wants nothing more to follow through and cut this man into pieces, and he's really excited because it's going to happen. He's going to do it. So, yeah, that moment, he sort of catches himself and looks up at the camera and seems to like realize the face he was making and what he was thinking about. And it's obviously a little bit jarring for him. So he says, this is my life now. I'm happy with that. I'm content. And his mother in the background is saying like how glad she is that he's back. Like she's genuinely pleased to have him move back in, which a lot of people Guillermo's age, their parents are not happy to have them move back in. I had sort of an interesting experience because when I split up with my ex-husband, I moved in with my mom for a few months before coming down to Texas. And my mother at first took me in thinking I was only going to be staying for like a week or so. And I was thinking I was only staying for a week or so. Then it became clear that we were going to have to do something further than that. And then it became clear that my mother wanted me to stay and was like glad to have me around the house. And when I finally left, she was actually really bummed about it. I think it didn't help that I also like left December 10th, sort of right before Christmas. And so the house just suddenly felt really empty for the holidays after me having been there. Because I'm basically the equivalent of like 2 or 3 people in terms of my presence and energy. And I really do feel kind of lucky at the fact that my mother was like wanting me around, where I know a lot of people who have by necessity moved back in with their parents and they have not been, I won't say welcomed, although maybe I could say welcomed, but they have not been appreciated, really. They have been made to realize they are imposing a little bit. And it's just nice when somebody isn't feeling that way about you. And it's very clear she's sincere in the fact that she's glad he's home. He even says it's good to be wanted. And he says, I miss them a lot, but, you know, what can you do? So he goes up to his mom. She's still struggling with the fridge. And she's saying to him, I'm worried that we're going to lose all this food. And he says that he has a mini fridge And I love, it's my friend Topher's, but you know, he's dead now. And she's like, oh, the poor thing. And he's like, no. Well, he was dead. You know what? Forget it. I'm just going to go get it. And I was sort of, this is one of those things where I feel that he means well and he really is trying to help his mom. However, it's a very convenient excuse to have to go back to the Staten Island vampires. And this is sort of what breakups can be like, right? You simultaneously don't want to be around them, but there's a just almost irresistible temptation to check back in and find reasons to bump into them to see how they're doing, or go back to the place that you shared and get something you forgot just to see what the vibe is like. So he's heading over there fully expecting to run into them and have it be a bit of a thing, when they are actually attending the Théâtre des Vampires. It is a very janky entrance, I have to say, and I was sort of wondering about this because the actual theater itself is lovely. It's like a real theater, but the way to get into it feels like they're coming in through the entrance for like staff or something, you know? And I do love, too, the guys with the cameras are being given press passes. Make sure to keep them with you at all times. So they come inside. The theater is really small, I should mention. And I don't know if this is actually a theater or if it's just a set. It's probably a set. But they are all sitting like right in the middle on the ground floor. There is one balcony that doesn't look like it holds that many people. And they're pretty excited about like the quality of the seats that they got. There's also Colin Robinson making jokes that nobody gets. And then we go back to Guillermo and he slips and falls on fucking blood because, again, they are not handling their shit at all. And the doll that has Nadja's ghost in it is sitting there at the bottom of the stairs, just sort of observing everything. And she's trying to say that, well, we knew you'd come crawling back and they don't need you. They went out. They're having a lovely time without you. And obviously trying to get under his skin. It looks like it's sort of working. I'll be honest. I was a bit disappointed at how easily Guillermo takes this bait. He just like looks crestfallen and glances at the camera in this way that's just hurt. And I was like, dude, come on. It's textbook, you know. If you have friends that are real friends and they run into your ex out in the wild, their responsibility to you as a friend is to emphasize how great you're doing. It's imperative that they lay it on very thick. You've been on a real upturn. You're taking really good care of yourself. You actually like got a bit of a promotion at work, and it's maybe you're moving because you've been offered something. Anything, just make up shit. It doesn't matter. But it has to be clear their leaving has had little to no impact on your quality of life. If that's not true, it doesn't matter. In fact, it's even more imperative if it's true that it has had an impact. So I love this, but he's just falling for it way too much. And she tells him the invitation is over there if you don't believe me. Very exclusive event. And he opens it and is like, wait, this is really detailed. And then he holds it up to the light and he says, does that look like it's the Vampire Council? They wouldn't go there, right? This is clearly a trap. They didn't go to this, did they? They didn't. And her doll says, yeah. And I think she's understanding the truth of this. I wasn't sure if she was going to believe what Guillermo was saying or accuse him of like making it up so that he has an excuse to go over there. It seems like she's picking up what he's putting down here, though. And she yells after him, "I do not think you will succeed." And he just says, "Shut up." So as this is all happening, oh yeah, and Jan is in the chat mentioning, I think the Vampire Theater is like the one from Interview with the Vampire. And yeah, for those who have not seen that, there is a scene in Interview with the Vampire where it's the all vampire theater, but there are some humans in the audience who aren't aware that's what this is. And it's a really disturbing scene, actually, because there's a woman on stage who's being actually murdered in front of them, but they think it's part of the play. So they're just like stripping this poor woman and tormenting her, and she's yelling for help, and everybody's like just sort of cheering because they think it's the performance, and they don't realize that she's actually being killed. And some of them do. Some of the people in the audience are vampires and are aware, but it's like open enough that there are people there as well. So yeah, this is the moment where we get everybody sort of looking around and seeing the different vampires who are here, who are all like single name vampires, like the kind of folks who are just so famous. And I love when Laszlo raises his hat. That's Mikhail. He's a total prick, nowhere near as funny as he thinks he is. She says, "Oh, that's Marcella, mistress of the night." More like Marcella, mistress of the shitty seats. Even Colin sees a woman named Pamela and gets really excited about like seeing her. Because she's an energy vampire who's like kind of high up. And I love she's talking to the guy sitting next to her who's just nodding in a way that indicates to me he's being fed upon at the moment. So Guillermo comes running up from the outside, and we have a very fun little moment where the camera guy is focused on him as he's like looking down the street to see if anyone's watching. The camera turns to check and then turns back, and Guillermo is already at the top of this pipe and has climbed it by himself in seconds. It's a fun moment because like I know climbing that pipe is not something he could do, but also we're just gonna go with it, and I love this for him. So the show begins, and of course we have one of the cast members from the original What We Do in the Shadows, whose name I never remember, apologies everyone, but he is the one doing the narration for the play this evening. And he appears in a puff of red smoke, very dramatic. It's really fun how bad this is. Like, because again, the whole thing with it being this eerie, beautiful, poignant performance, and then what we get is just so goofy and dumb. And I could say it's just made extra dumb because it's like explicitly to target our friends and not the usual kind of performance that they put on. But I am going to say everybody talking about how poignant and beautiful it was is just talking up bullshit in order to make themselves sound like they're party to something really special, because that's what people do. You know, I mean, there is sometimes, this is one of those things that I have like really mixed feelings on, but it's because the truth of it is very mixed. When you're dealing with like stuff that is really, really exclusive, there are sort of two camps, and it's the one, it isn't actually that great. They just say it's that great because they want everybody really impressed with the fact that, oh, I was able to go. Oh, you weren't invited? Oh, I'm so sorry. I was invited. I'm invited every year. And then there's it really is that great. But mostly, if it is that great, people don't really brag about it. It's like the same as being hyper rich. If you really have a ton of money, you don't need to talk about how you have a ton of money. The way that you live and the people you interact with just tell that story for you. And there's no need for you to get into that at all. And I just really like, there's certain products and stuff that if you're spending more, I think you can really tell that this is worth more and that this costs more. Like there's, you know, but something costing more as a product specifically isn't necessarily the same as something being exclusive. And I find exclusivity to be usually a con. Like, it's a well-known fact in marketing. If you make it seem like not everybody is going to get whatever the thing is, everybody is going to want it more because they feel like they're getting lucky somehow, you know? And that's part of if you see marketing on like Facebook ads and stuff, they'll say it'll be a company you never heard of. And they'll say something like, we sold out in 10 minutes last year, but we finally restocked. Get yours now before they run out. That kind of thing. And they plant it in your head that this thing is in such demand because A, it's that good that everybody wanted one. And B, that there aren't enough of them to go around, that you really better jump on it right now. And even on Amazon listings, you'll see this. There'll be like one remaining. You better buy it now. And I have started to fall for that and put it in my cart, forgot, and I come back and it'll say 6 remaining, you know, like several days later when I open the listing again. It works. There's a reason they do it, you know? So anyway, he says, tonight our performance is different. It's something a little bit special. We all know the reason we're here. And then, well, most of us do. Please make welcome our guests of honor. And the lights show down on Laszlo, Nadja, Colin, and Nandor, who at first are like delighted. And then the vampires behind them jump up and wrap them in silver ropes. And all of a sudden they realize what's going on and that this is vampire council shit. And he says, yeah, there's only one crime, and that is killing one of your own kind. And they all are just like, what the fuck? We never did that. But nobody will believe them. And it's interesting because they start to give up the info a little bit later. And I love so much that Guillermo's listening and he's like, I can't tell if they're covering for me or if they really don't know his last name. They really don't know your last name, bud. I'm so sorry, but I think they would have just given up the info and allowed you to be executed. I really think they would. And I kind of think you know that in your heart of hearts, but we get a series of set pieces here, very literally. It's super fun because we've got the actors on stage who are meant to be Laszlo, Nadja, Nandor, and Colin. And this is one of those conceits that I always find really fun, is whenever a TV show or movie has characters who are in world famous enough that a play is made of them and they have to go and watch the play about their own deeds or adventures. It's always just so ripe for a ton of really, really good jokes. And sometimes it's kind of you know, like the one that I thought went on a little bit too long was in, oh my God, the Marvel show with the guy with the arrows, Hawkeye. And he is going to a play about the Avengers. And this just, it went on too long. Like, it wasn't funny enough to justify how much time they spent on it. But then there's like the excellent ones. And my personal favorite that I go to all the time is Avatar: The Last Airbender. They eventually like see a play about their own adventures. And they're being, I mean, some of the stories are pretty close to accurate the way they're telling them, but the characterization of everybody is wildly off base. And it's just so much fun to see the characters either be pleased at the way they're being depicted or insulted or like baffled, you know? So anyway, we have the first death of the Baron, who, they have, you know, just a regular, like, Nosferatu-ass vampire that they spin around and then there's a charred skeleton on the other side. I love when Nadja says, "This is all shit. I would never high five." I'm just going to draw y'all's attention really quick. I'm not going to do any more tangents after this, I swear. But she said this and I had to mention. There is an article that has been circulating, and I don't remember the exact title, but it is something like "Why I Don't High Five Children." And it is written by either a psychologist or child psychologist with the biggest stick up his ass I've ever heard in my life. And an actual line from the article is, "I will only slap palms with someone who is a peer." Basically, I don't high five kids because then they think they're on my level. And it's a whole article about why he doesn't high five kids. It's fucking insane. These are people that need therapy. He's a psychologist. He shouldn't be. He needs to take some time off and like fucking investigate his own self, because there is something wrong. He needs to get over himself. So anyway, that just reminded me of him, because just, I would never high five. I love Colin. I'll be honest. My actor is kind of giving me a chub. He looks very much to me like the guy who impersonates the dean in Community, but I don't know if it's the same actor. Meanwhile, Guillermo is watching all of this and realizing they are being accused of the murders that he committed. And I'm saying murders. I don't know if I even want to call it that, but yeah, we'll say that. And of course, they're all like cheering and dancing around after having murdered these vampires. I love when we get the rhymes that are extremely tortured about the things that they committed. And at one point, he's talking about how they killed one of the assassins that was just doing his job. And it's just like, the fact that this guy was here to kill them isn't even a factor. It's just, they were doing their job. You should have just let them kill you guys, obviously. So yeah, one after another, we get to see these guys murdered in very like silly stage ways with red ribbon for their blood, stuff like that. And the crowd is like booing in obedience to what it is this guy is telling them to, because he's trying to like sort of hype them, right? The narrator. But they don't seem that into it. I'll be perfectly honest. I was kind of like, I don't get from them that they're like feeling this particularly. And then we have the murder of that vampire family. And they're being accused of that also. Which I was like, I really want to know why. Why is it an assumption that the Staten Island vampires killed this vampire family? Where did they even get that? But it's full on. They believe that this is what they did, I think. I don't know if they're being like framed or what. So anyway, we have them all being like brought up onto the stage and questioned, saying that it was Guillermo. And of course, the narrator just being like, oh, blaming it on the familiar. We've all tried to pull that. But again, they can't remember his last name. And then, even if they could, Nandor says, I also ripped him apart with my bare hands anyway. So it doesn't even matter because he's dead now. So everything is fine. And then all of a sudden, they're doing this bit where they're demonstrating what a fight between Guillermo and one of the vampires would be like. And they have a literal child who's like 11. And he's on like pulleys and ropes and he's getting tossed around. It's actually pretty fun. He's wearing a sweater and pants that are not at all unlike something that Guillermo would actually wear, for the record. Like, I've seen him in this outfit. So all of a sudden, Guillermo swings onto the stage with a rope in absolutely fantastic style, kills a vampire immediately, and the fucking narrator turns into a bat and leaves. There is no battle. I thought he might fight. He does not even try. He almost goes after his own, like, double, the child, and he can't do it, so he just tells him to get lost. And then Guillermo just gets into a prolonged fight with a bunch of the vampires in the audience who are like stepping up to apparently try and take him down. I guess that it's just the principle of the thing. What's a guy who isn't even a vampire comes in and starts wreaking havoc on all your people? How are you not supposed to just take that personally? I mean, that's fair. He's got holy water. He's got stakes. He's got crucifixes. He is loaded up. And of course, the Staten Island vampires are still trapped on stage. They're tied down and they're just watching all of this and kind of mystified at the fact that he's like managing all of it because they didn't know any of this about him. The only one that had any sort of clue about it is Nandor. And then at one point, the camera goes out, comes back again, and we just see him covered in gore in this fucking outfit and standing there with the spotlight on him in an incredibly impressive stance. Nandor says, "Is there something you haven't been telling us?" And he says, "My name is Guillermo de la Cruz." And there's a pause. And Nandor says, "I don't care what the fuck your name is. We had to pick up our own laundry." And that's where it ends. Nandor, the man just saved your life. He has been. Don't say that you don't give a fuck what his name is. You're not helping yourself out. And I know that's the joke, but like, sir, I'm dying to know how Guillermo handles this. I really am. Like, because he's looking at him from the audience, again, dripping in blood, holding a fucking stake, not looking like he is here to fuck around at all. And I just really, really want to know how Guillermo is going to handle it. Because I kind of want him to just leave and be like, "Oh, okay. Well, if you guys are going to handle it, I guess I'll just leave you with these 30 vampire corpses to explain to the vampire council." And I don't think he's gonna, but I really want him to. And I say I don't think he's gonna, but I don't know. Guillermo's been a little bit more cold-blooded lately, so maybe he will. I don't know. It all depends on like really how much he's willing to put up with. I would appreciate him coming in to save their lives because they're being accused of shit he did. But also, I mean, if you want to wash your hands of it at this point, Guillermo, I wouldn't blame you. Not one bit. Jan says the mosquito hunters killed the vampire family, but nobody believes the vampire hunters exist. That only leaves our vamps. Well, that's kind of the thing, though, Jan. Like, I know that the other guys did kill the family. But if you don't think vampire hunters really exist, immediately just being like, "Oh, it must be the other vampires on Staten Island," is sort of a weird reach. Like, why would you think that? What did they have to gain from it? You know? But it doesn't matter really because it's not really the point of all this. The whole point is simply that they continually are being blamed for things that Guillermo did. So it's not really a big deal, but I would have liked to actually see the family being discovered as dead. And I know that can't really work because of the nature of how this is supposedly being filmed, right? Why would they be there to catch the moment where the family is discovered dead? But I kind of still would have liked to see, you know, maybe Guillermo pulls up the next morning, just sort of watching them go in and find things. And the camera is like following after him as he sort of hovers on the edges. Like so many people who have committed crimes who return to the scene of the crime. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the episode, they're still like tied up there. Guillermo is loaded with weapons and has just killed so many vampires in a very short amount of time. I really don't know where we go from here. And that's a very good season ending. I would have been like pretty salty if that was where it ended and we never got a season 3. That would have sucked. So anyway, all right. I'm going to wrap it up, but thank you again very much to Max for commissioning this. Thank you to Jan, and Martin in the chat for hanging out with me and chatting with me. And I hope you guys are enjoying the coverage. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Unspoiled Network podcast.